My name is Eleanor Brooks. I am 82 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that love from family was unconditional. I raised my only son, Daniel, with everything I had, giving up my dreams to make sure he could live his. But on the night when the moon hung low over the jagged cliffs behind my house, I learned just how wrong I was. The roar of the ocean below was deafening, crashing against the rocks like an angry beast. The wind whipped through my gray hair as I gripped the edge of my blanket, sitting silently behind a large oak tree where no one could see me. My wheelchair, sat empty just a few feet away. And there was Daniel, my son. His hands trembling as he pushed the empty chair closer and closer to the edge. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered to himself, his voice breaking. "But I can't wait any longer." I watched as he shoved the wheelchair with sudden force. It rolled, gaining speed, until it disappeared over the cliff's edge, swallowed by the darkness. The sound of metal crashing against rocks echoed through the night. My son fell to his knees, clutching his head, thinking he had just murdered me. But I wasn't in it. I had seen through him long before this night. As I stood there, heart pounding, I realized I had caught my own son in the act of trying to kill me. He believed I was gone. And in that moment, a part of me wished he would stay in the comfort of that belief, until I decided when and how to reveal the truth. I stepped back into the shadows, tears burning my eyes, because this betrayal cut deeper than any wound. The boy I had raised with love, the boy I had held in my arms, had turned into the man who wanted me dead. But Daniel had no idea I was still alive. And he had no idea what I was about to do next. You see, the wheelchair was just part of my plan. And that night under the stars I vowed to make him pay, not with anger but with something far worse. The story of how we got here, to this cliff, to this moment of betrayal, begins long before this night. It starts with the life I built, the sacrifices I made, and the small cracks that slowly widened until they broke me apart. Before I tell you how I turned the tables on my own son, you need to know why he believed I was weak enough to kill, and why I allowed him to believe that. Because the truth is, I've been preparing for this moment for years. And when Daniel finds out the truth, it will be too late for him to fix what he's done. Stay with me. What comes next will shock you. If you think betrayal by your own blood is the worst thing that can happen, wait until you hear how far this story goes. Please like, comment, and subscribe to this channel to hear what happened next, because this is just the beginning. I was born in a small town in Maine, where the winters were long and the people were close-knit. My husband, John, and I built our life together there. He was a fisherman with a heart as vast as the sea, and I was a schoolteacher who loved nothing more than seeing children grow. When our son Daniel was born, we thought our life was complete. I spoiled him with love, maybe too much. Every scrape on his knee, every tear he shed, I was there to wipe it away. John died when Daniel was only 17. It was sudden, a heart attack that left us both broken. That was the day I noticed a change in my boy. He grew quiet, distant, as if life had cheated him. I tried to fill the void, to give him everything he needed, even when it meant putting my own needs aside. Over the years, I worked hard, saved money, and invested wisely in a few properties John had left behind. Slowly, our modest life grew into something more. By the time I retired, I owned several rental houses, a cozy cabin, and the cliffside home where we lived. But as my wealth grew, so did Daniel's appetite. He dropped out of college after only a year, saying it wasn't for him. He drifted from job to job, never staying long enough to build anything of his own. And each time he failed, I picked him up, giving him money, paying his debts, covering his mistakes. The first time I suspected he might be capable of something darker was after his second divorce. His wife had accused him of manipulating her for money. I didn't want to believe it, but her words stayed with me. He only loves what he can take from people. Years later, when my health began to decline, Daniel's visits became more frequent. At first, I thought he was finally being the caring son I had always wanted. But soon, I noticed how his eyes lingered on my belongings, the deeds to my properties, the safe where I kept my will. He started asking questions. Too many questions about what would happen to everything when I was gone. One night, I overheard him on the phone. He thought I was asleep, but I heard him whisper, "When she's gone, I'll finally get what I deserve." Those words pierced me like a knife. I knew then that I couldn't trust him. I couldn't trust my own flesh and blood. But I also knew that confronting him wouldn't work. He would just deny it, maybe even speed up his plans. So I started to prepare. I changed my will, quietly, with my lawyer's help. I arranged for hidden cameras in my home, and I began documenting every suspicious thing Daniel did. I also moved my most valuable assets into a trust he didn't know about. Most importantly, I started to fake my weakness. I let him believe my arthritis was worse than it was. I let him believe I needed the wheelchair, when in reality I could still walk with a cane. I let him see me struggle to climb stairs, to open jars, to do the simplest things, because the more helpless I seemed, the more careless he became. The breaking point came 2 months ago when I found out he had been talking to a realtor, trying to appraise my house behind my back. When I asked him about it, he laughed and said, "Just planning ahead, Mom. You won't be around forever." That night I cried myself to sleep. Not because I feared death, but because I realized the boy I had loved so fiercely no longer existed. From that day I stopped being the victim. I began to play the role he wanted me to play, the fragile old woman who was easy to get rid of. And so we arrived at the night on the cliff. I had told Daniel I wanted to watch the sunset one last time from the highest point of our land, the edge of the cliffs overlooking the ocean. He agreed with a smile that chilled me to my bones. When the day came, I made sure to leave early before he arrived. I hid behind the oak tree where he wouldn't see me. I watched as he arrived with a strange calmness on his face, wheeling the empty chair as if he were taking me to my death. When he pushed it, I felt both heartbreak and triumph. Heartbreak because my son had chosen greed over love. Triumph because I had outsmarted him. But the game was only beginning. The next morning, I would let the world believe I had died. I would disappear. I would let Daniel think he had won, that my fortune was his. And just when he felt untouchable, I would return and rip the ground out from under him. Because a mother's love may forgive, but it never forgets. What Daniel didn't know was that I had allies. My lawyer, my old friend Martha, and even the sheriff knew part of my plan. As I slipped away into the darkness that night, I swore to myself, "He will regret this. He will regret ever underestimating me." But my heart still ached, because no victory could heal the wound of knowing your own child wanted you dead. The question was, how far was Daniel willing to go now that he believed I was gone? The answer to that question would soon shock even me. Don't miss what happens next. The storm has only begun. Please like, comment, and subscribe to this channel to follow the rest of my story. The night after Daniel pushed my empty wheelchair off the cliff, I didn't go home. Instead, I stayed in the small cabin at the edge of town that no one knew I owned. It was my secret retreat, a place I had kept hidden for years. The walls smelled of cedar, and the fireplace still held remnants of past winters. I lit a small fire and sat there, trembling, not from cold but from the raw ache of betrayal. As I stared at the flames, I thought of the boy who once clung to me when he had nightmares, the boy who swore he'd always take care of me when I grew old. That boy was gone. In his place was a man driven by greed, a man who believed my life was worth less than the inheritance he craved. By dawn the news had spread. The sheriff knocked on my front door, expecting to find a body, or at least what was left of it. Instead, he found nothing but an empty house and the shattered remains of the wheelchair at the bottom of the cliff. The waves had already dragged away what was left of it. Daniel was crying when they questioned him. The act was perfect. He told them how I had asked him to take me to the cliff to watch the sunset and how the wheelchair must have slipped when he turned his back. They believed him, or at least they pretended to. Sheriff Miller called me that afternoon. His voice calm but firm. "She's safe," he told the officers, covering the receiver with his hand. "You won't see her again until she's ready." Daniel signed papers to start the process of claiming my estate the very next day. I watched from a distance, hidden in my car, as he walked into the lawyer's office with a smugness that made my stomach turn. But he didn't know that my will had been rewritten. He didn't know that the house he thought was his was already signed over to someone else. He didn't know that the trust holding my wealth required proof of my actual death, proof he could never provide. Still, he acted as though he had won. I watched him host a small gathering at my house just a week after my death. Strangers filled my living room, drinking from my glasses, laughing in my chairs. Daniel gave them a tour, boasting about what was now his. From the shadows of the garden, I clenched my cane so hard my knuckles turned white. Rage boiled inside me, but I forced myself to stay quiet. This was not the time to strike. Instead, I started gathering evidence. I had hidden cameras still active in the house, quietly recording every conversation, every shady deal, every cruel word he spoke about me. I watched as he sold off some of my antiques, pocketing cash behind closed doors. And then I overheard something that made my blood run cold. Late one night he stood in the living room speaking on the phone. "No one saw anything," he said. "She's gone. The old woman's finally gone. Now we just have to move fast before anyone starts asking questions." I knew then that he wasn't just greedy. He was dangerous. If he could push his own mother off a cliff, what else was he capable of? But I also knew something he didn't. I had the power to destroy him. I began visiting old friends, people Daniel didn't know. I told them bits and pieces of the truth, swearing them to secrecy. I worked with my lawyer to set legal traps that would snap shut at the right moment. The sheriff agreed to play along, keeping my survival a secret while quietly collecting evidence of Daniel's crimes. "When the time comes," Sheriff Miller said, "we'll have him." As the days passed, Daniel grew bolder. He began spending money like water, buying expensive suits, throwing parties, and even bragging to some friends about how he would soon sell my cliffside property to a developer. That was the final straw. That cliff wasn't just land. It was where John and I had spent our happiest moments, where Daniel had learned to walk holding his father's hand, where I had scattered John's ashes. To sell it was to erase our history. I vowed to stop him at any cost. And so, I set the final phase of my plan in motion. I left a note on his car one night. Just 6 words. "You didn't finish the job, Daniel." The next morning, he looked pale as death. I watched from afar as he scanned the street, looking for whoever had left it. He didn't know if it was a cruel prank or a ghost, but it was enough to put fear in his heart. That was only the beginning. Because soon Daniel would not only fear me, he would beg for mercy. But I don't forgive betrayal. Not this kind. The night before I confronted him, I stood at the edge of the cliff where he had tried to kill me. The wind howled around me, and the waves crashed violently below. I whispered to John's memory, "Tomorrow, love, he'll know who I really am." And tomorrow Daniel's world would start to crumble. What happens next will shake him to his core. Stay tuned for the next chapter. Please like, comment, and subscribe to follow this unbelievable story to the end. Daniel didn't sleep the night he found my note. I knew because I was watching. From the darkness across the street, I saw him pacing inside the house, phone in hand, curtains twitching every few minutes as he peered out into the night. He thought he was alone in this world with me gone. But the truth is, I was closer than he ever imagined. The next day, his paranoia grew. He called the police to report that someone was stalking him, but when they came, they found no evidence. Sheriff Miller, fully aware of the game we were playing, told him calmly, "We'll keep an eye out, but it might just be your imagination, son." Daniel wasn't convinced. He checked the locks on every door, installed new cameras, and even changed the alarm system. But no matter what he did, I made sure he always found small reminders of me. An old scarf of mine on the porch swing, a framed photo of John and me that he had thrown away mysteriously reappearing on the mantel. He was losing control and he knew it. Meanwhile, I stayed in my hidden cabin, building my strength and preparing my next move. Each night, I reviewed the footage from the hidden cameras still active in the house. The things I saw shocked me to the core. Daniel was not only selling my antiques and jewelry, he was also forging my signature on documents. He was trying to access accounts that were no longer under his control. And then there was the woman. A younger woman with sharp eyes and a calculating smile. She started showing up at the house, staying late into the night. From the recordings, I learned her name was Lisa. She wasn't just a fling, she was his partner in crime. I heard her say, "Once everything is sold, we'll leave this place and never look back." Daniel replied, "As long as no one finds out what I did." Lisa smirked and whispered, "No one will. She's gone." Their confidence made me furious, but it also gave me an idea. The next day, I asked Sheriff Miller to deliver a sealed envelope to Daniel's mailbox. Inside was a single photograph, taken from the hidden cameras, showing him standing at the edge of the cliff with his hands on the wheelchair. On the back I wrote, "I saw everything." When Daniel opened it, he went pale as a ghost. He stumbled back, clutching the photo as if it might burn him. Lisa snatched it from his hands, reading the message aloud. "What is this, Daniel? Who took this picture?" He stammered. I don't know. She's dead. She has to be." Lisa narrowed her eyes. "Are you sure? Because someone out there knows what you did." That night they fought. Lisa screamed at him, accusing him of dragging her into something dangerous. Daniel tried to calm her down, but she stormed out, slamming the door. I watched it all unfold with a grim satisfaction. The cracks were widening and soon they would swallow him whole. But Daniel wasn't going to give up easily. The next day he drove to the cliff. I followed him silently, staying far enough behind that he wouldn't notice. When he reached the edge, he stood there, staring down at the crashing waves, muttering to himself. Then he shouted, "What do you want from me?" His voice was swallowed by the wind. I wanted to answer, but I stayed silent. Instead, I left another note pinned to the tree where I had hidden the night he tried to kill me. This one said, "You can't escape what you've done." When he found it, his hands shook so badly he dropped it. From that moment, Daniel began to unravel. He stopped answering calls, stopped seeing Lisa, and started drinking heavily. I watched as his once cocky demeanor turned into something pitiful. But still, he clung to the house, to my property, to the life he thought he had stolen. I decided it was time to show myself. But not to him. Not yet. Instead, I visited Lisa. She was shocked to see me standing at her apartment door, cane in hand, alive and breathing. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. You're supposed to be dead," she stammered. I smiled coldly. "I know what you and Daniel have been doing. You can either help me bring him down, or you can go down with him." Lisa hesitated, but in the end she agreed. She was scared, and fear makes people talk. She gave me recordings, texts, and even bank statements proving Daniel's crimes. Armed with this evidence, I prepared the final part of my plan. The night before I struck, I stood once again at the cliff, the place where Daniel had tried to end my life. The waves crashed below, and the wind carried John's memory to me. I whispered, "Tomorrow, he will learn that you can't bury the truth." The next morning, Daniel woke up to find the house empty, but on every wall, I had left copies of the photograph, the notes, and legal papers showing that the house no longer belonged to him. His screams echoed through the halls, but no one came to help him. And as he stood in the middle of the living room, tearing the papers to shreds, the front door opened. It was me. His face turned white. "Mom!" I smiled, calm and cold. "Hello, Daniel." He backed away, trembling. "You're dead. You're supposed to be dead." I stepped closer. "No, son. I'm very much alive. And you're about to lose everything." Before he could respond, Sheriff Miller stepped in behind me, holding a warrant. "Daniel Brooks, you're under arrest." The look on his face as they cuffed him was something I'll never forget. Fear. Regret. But this was only the beginning. Because Daniel wasn't going to go down quietly. And neither was I. You won't believe what happens when he tries to fight back. Stay with me for the next chapter, because this battle is far from over. Please like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next part of my story. The sirens faded into the night as the police car drove Daniel away in handcuffs. I stood on the porch of the house he thought he had stolen, gripping my cane so tightly my hand hurt. The cold air bit at my face, but I didn't move. For the first time in months, I felt the weight of fear lifting from my shoulders. But that relief was short-lived because I knew Daniel. He wasn't the type to accept defeat, even when the evidence was stacked against him. The sheriff turned to me. "Eleanor, he's facing serious charges. Fraud, attempted murder, forgery. But you should prepare yourself. He might not stay locked up for long. His lawyer will fight tooth and nail." I nodded slowly. "I'm not afraid of him anymore, Sheriff. I just need to make sure he can't hurt me, or anyone else again." That night, I slept in my own bed for the first time since the night of the cliff. The house was silent, but my mind wasn't. I kept thinking about the boy Daniel used to be. Where had I gone wrong? Could a mother's love ever turn a child away from this darkness? Or had my love made him weak, spoiled him until greed replaced his heart? I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing. It was my lawyer, Robert. "Eleanor, he's already posted bail," he said. "Someone wired him the money." My heart sank. "Who?" "Lisa," Robert replied. "We think she's still helping him." I hung up, gripping the phone as my pulse raced. Lisa had betrayed me. Or maybe she was playing both sides. Either way, Daniel was free, and I knew he wouldn't waste any time. That afternoon, I saw a car pull up at the end of my driveway. Daniel stepped out, his face hardened with rage. He didn't look like a son. He looked like a predator. I stayed inside, locking every door, every window. He pounded on the door, shouting, "Mom, open this door. You think you can destroy me? You think you can take everything from me?" I stayed silent. He banged louder, screaming curses, until Sheriff Miller's patrol car pulled up. Daniel backed away, sneering at me through the window before driving off. The sheriff warned me. "He's desperate now. Be careful." That night I moved back to the cabin. I knew Daniel would try something again, and I wanted him to think he had scared me away. Let him believe he had the upper hand. Because I was already 2 steps ahead. Lisa called me the next morning. Her voice trembled. "Eleanor, he's lost his mind. He's blaming me now. He says I betrayed him. I swear I'm done with him. Please let me help you." I didn't know if I could trust her, but I told her. "Then prove it. Get him to talk. Get him to confess to everything." Over the next few days, Lisa recorded every conversation she had with Daniel. His anger spilled out in every word. How he had pushed the wheelchair, how he had planned to sell everything, how he thought the law couldn't touch him. Each recording was another nail in his coffin. But Daniel must have sensed the walls closing in. 2 nights later, I woke to the sound of footsteps outside the cabin. My heart thudded in my chest as I grabbed my phone. The front porch creaked. A shadow passed by the window. I called the sheriff, whispering, "He's here." Before the sirens arrived, Daniel tried to break the door. I held my breath, clutching a heavy iron poker from the fireplace. The door cracked, but then the flashing lights filled the yard, and he ran into the trees. The deputies chased him, but he disappeared into the night. Sheriff Miller told me, "He's dangerous, Eleanor. You can't stay here alone." I looked at him with fire in my eyes. "I won't run anymore. This is my land. This is my home." For the next week, Daniel vanished. No calls, no sightings. The police searched, but he was like a ghost. Part of me hoped he had fled, that this nightmare was over. But deep down I knew better. He wasn't finished with me. And then it happened. One rainy evening, I returned to the house to find the front door ajar. My stomach dropped. Inside, the furniture was overturned, drawers pulled out, papers scattered everywhere. He had been here. He had left one thing behind. A single piece of paper on the kitchen counter. In bold, messy handwriting it said, "You took everything from me. Now it's my turn." My hands shook as I read it. He was planning something bigger, something worse than before. The sheriff increased patrols around my house, but I knew Daniel wouldn't attack when they were watching. He was patient. He was clever. He was waiting for the perfect moment. I stayed awake every night, the poker by my bed, the cameras rolling, my heart beating like a drum. Days passed, but there was no sign of him. Until one evening when I heard a voice outside. A voice I would never mistake. "Mom, let's talk." I peeked through the curtains. There he was, standing in the rain, soaked to the bone, his hands empty. "I'm sorry," he called out. "I just want to talk. Please let me in." Every instinct screamed at me not to open that door. But I needed to see what he was up to. Slowly, I unlocked it, my cane in hand. He stepped inside, dripping water, his eyes wild. "I just want what's mine," he said. "You've tortured me long enough." I stood my ground. "You tried to kill me, Daniel. You'll get nothing." He lunged forward, and I stumbled back, gripping my cane tight. Before he could reach me, the door burst open again. Sheriff Miller and his deputies stormed in, tackling him to the ground. Daniel thrashed, screaming, "You'll regret this, Mom. You'll regret this." As they dragged him out, he spat at me, his voice filled with venom. "This isn't over." And I knew he meant it. Even behind bars, he would find a way to strike back. But so would I. The war between mother and son has just begun. You won't believe how far Daniel goes in the next chapter. Stay with me and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to hear the rest of this unbelievable story. The hearing was only a week away, and though Daniel was back in custody, I knew he was far from defeated. Even behind bars, his influence seeped through cracks like poison. The sheriff warned me. "He's been making calls, Eleanor. He's trying to twist the story, convince people you're unstable." I sighed, staring out the window at the rain-soaked yard. Let him try. I'm ready for him this time. Over the next few days, I focused on gathering every piece of evidence. Lisa stayed close, her nerves frayed, but her loyalty strong. She handed over a flash drive filled with recordings of Daniel bragging about pushing the wheelchair, forging documents, and plotting to sell everything I owned. "This will end him," she said with a shaky smile. But Daniel wasn't done scheming. 2 nights before the hearing, the cabin phone rang. I hesitated, then answered. Silence. Then a voice I knew too well. "You think you've won, but you don't know who you're dealing with." "Daniel, stop this madness," I said, my voice trembling. "You're destroying yourself." He laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "No, Mum. I'm destroying you." The line went dead. My hands shook as I hung up. It was the calm before the storm. The next day, the sheriff came with news. We intercepted a letter he sent to someone on the outside. "He's planning something for the day of the hearing." My stomach churned. "Something like what?" Miller's jaw tightened. "We don't know yet, but we're increasing security." That night I barely slept. I packed a small bag with essentials just in case. Lisa stayed with me, her eyes wide with fear. "What if he escapes again?" she whispered. I looked at her, my voice steady. "Then I'll face him. I won't run anymore." Morning arrived, and with it, the day of the hearing. The courthouse buzzed with tension. Reporters crowded outside, cameras flashing, as we entered under police escort. Inside, Daniel sat at the defense table, his hands cuffed, his eyes locked on me. They burned with hate, but also something else. Fear. As the judge called the court to order, Daniel's lawyer launched into a dramatic speech, painting him as a victim. "Your Honor, my client has suffered psychological trauma due to his mother's erratic behavior. She faked her death, manipulated events, and caused him severe distress." I clenched my fists, but I stayed silent. This was his last card to play. Then it was our turn. Robert stood tall, calm and confident. "Your Honor, what you're about to hear will prove beyond any doubt who the true victim is." We played the recordings. Daniel's own voice filled the courtroom, confessing to pushing my wheelchair off the cliff, bragging about his plans to steal everything. Gasps echoed through the room. His lawyer's face drained of color. Lisa took the stand, her testimony clear and unwavering. She told the court how Daniel had threatened both of us, how he had plotted every step. The evidence was overwhelming. But just when it seemed like victory was certain, chaos erupted. A man in the back of the courtroom stood up suddenly shouting, "She's lying! Daniel's innocent!" He charged toward me, but the deputies tackled him before he got close. My heart pounded. Who was he? One of Daniel's friends. Another pawn in his twisted game. The judge slammed the gavel. Order! Order in the court! The deputies dragged the man away, but the message was clear. Daniel had allies willing to do his bidding. Despite the disruption, the judge continued. After hours of testimony and evidence, the verdict was read. Daniel was found guilty of attempted murder, fraud, and multiple other charges. The courtroom erupted in murmurs as the judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Daniel's face twisted with rage. He stood shouting, "This isn't over. You hear me, Mom? I'll get out. I'll make you pay." The deputies restrained him, pulling him away as he screamed curses at me. I sat still, my heart heavy but relieved. The court emptied, but I stayed behind for a moment, staring at the empty chair where my son had sat. I whispered, "Goodbye, Daniel." I thought it was over. I thought I could finally breathe. But that night, back at the cabin, a note slipped under my door. My blood ran cold as I read the words. "You may have won today, but I have nothing left to lose." And a man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous kind. The handwriting was Daniel's. Somehow, someone had delivered his threat straight to me. My chest tightened. The war wasn't over. Not yet. The darkness outside seemed to press closer, and for the first time in a long while, I felt fear clawing at my throat. Tomorrow I would have to take the fight to him, once and for all. You won't believe the deadly trap he sets in the next chapter. This is where everything explodes. Stay with me and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The hearing was only a week away, and though Daniel was back in custody, I knew he was far from defeated. Even behind bars, his influence seeped through cracks like poison. The sheriff warned me. "He's been making calls, Eleanor. He's trying to twist the story, convince people you're unstable." I sighed, staring out the window at the rain-soaked yard. Let him try. I'm ready for him this time. Over the next few days, I focused on gathering every piece of evidence. Lisa stayed close, her nerves frayed, but her loyalty strong. She handed over a flash drive filled with recordings of Daniel bragging about pushing the wheelchair, forging documents, and plotting to sell everything I owned. "This will end him," she said with a shaky smile. But Daniel wasn't done scheming. 2 nights before the hearing, the cabin phone rang. I hesitated, then answered. Silence. Then a voice I knew too well. "You think you've won, but you don't know who you're dealing with." "Daniel, stop this madness," I said, my voice trembling. "You're destroying yourself." He laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "No, Mum. I'm destroying you." The line went dead. My hands shook as I hung up. It was the calm before the storm. The next day, the sheriff came with news. We intercepted a letter he sent to someone on the outside. "He's planning something for the day of the hearing." My stomach churned. "Something like what?" Miller's jaw tightened. "We don't know yet, but we're increasing security." That night I barely slept. I packed a small bag with essentials just in case. Lisa stayed with me, her eyes wide with fear. "What if he escapes again?" she whispered. I looked at her, my voice steady. "Then I'll face him. I won't run anymore." Morning arrived, and with it, the day of the hearing. The courthouse buzzed with tension. Reporters crowded outside, cameras flashing, as we entered under police escort. Inside, Daniel sat at the defense table, his hands cuffed, his eyes locked on me. They burned with hate but also something else, fear. As the judge called the court to order, Daniel's lawyer launched into a dramatic speech, painting him as a victim. "Your Honor, my client has suffered psychological trauma due to his mother's erratic behavior. She faked her death, manipulated events, and caused him severe distress." I clenched my fists, but I stayed silent. This was his last card to play. Then it was our turn. Robert stood tall, calm and confident. "Your Honor, what you're about to hear will prove beyond any doubt who the true victim is." We played the recordings. Daniel's own voice filled the courtroom, confessing to pushing my wheelchair off the cliff, bragging about his plans to steal everything. Gasps echoed through the room. His lawyer's face drained of color. Lisa took the stand, her testimony clear and unwavering. She told the court how Daniel had threatened both of us, how he had plotted every step. The evidence was overwhelming. But just when it seemed like victory was certain, chaos erupted. A man in the back of the courtroom stood up suddenly shouting, "She's lying! Daniel's innocent!" He charged toward me, but the deputies tackled him before he got close. My heart pounded. Who was he? One of Daniel's friends. Another pawn in his twisted game. The judge slammed the gavel. "Order! Order in the court!" The deputies dragged the man away, but the message was clear. Daniel had allies willing to do his bidding. Despite the disruption, the judge continued. After hours of testimony and evidence, the verdict was read. Daniel was found guilty of attempted murder, fraud, and multiple other charges. The courtroom erupted in murmurs as the judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Daniel's face twisted with rage. He stood shouting, "This isn't over. You hear me, Mom? I'll get out. I'll make you pay." The deputies restrained him, pulling him away as he screamed curses at me. I sat still, my heart heavy but relieved. The court emptied, but I stayed behind for a moment, staring at the empty chair where my son had sat. I whispered, "Goodbye, Daniel." I thought it was over. I thought I could finally breathe. But that night, back at the cabin, a note slipped under my door. My blood ran cold as I read the words. "You may have won today, but I have nothing left to lose. And a man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous kind." The handwriting was Daniel's. Somehow, someone had delivered his threat straight to me. My chest tightened. The war wasn't over. Not yet. The darkness outside seemed to press closer, and for the first time in a long while, I felt fear clawing at my throat. Tomorrow I would have to take the fight to him, once and for all. You won't believe the deadly trap he sets in the next chapter. This is where everything explodes. Stay with me and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. The note under my door changed everything. For hours I sat by the fire, staring at those chilling words. A man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous kind. Daniel wasn't bluffing. He had already proven how far he could go, and now that prison walls held him, he would be more cunning, more reckless. The next morning, Sheriff Miller came to the cabin, his face tense. "Eleanor, we searched the jail. The note didn't come from inside. He's working through someone on the outside. We don't know who." Lisa, sitting at the table with her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, whispered, "He has friends you don't even know about. People who think he's some kind of victim." I looked at both of them. "Then we need to be ready. Because he's coming for me. One way or another." That night I barely slept. Every sound outside made my heart jump. The trees creaked, the wind howled, and I kept the poker at my side. When the clock struck midnight, my phone buzzed. It was a blocked number. I answered, my voice shaking. "Hello." Daniel's voice oozed through the line, low and calm. "Enjoy your little victory, Mom. Don't get too comfortable. I have friends who owe me favors. You'll see me sooner than you think." Before I could respond, the line went dead. My hands trembled as I set the phone down. The following day, a black truck was spotted near my property. It circled twice before disappearing. Sheriff Miller stationed a deputy outside my cabin, but I knew that wouldn't stop whoever Daniel had working for him. This wasn't just fear anymore. It was war. 2 nights later the attack came. The deputy outside suddenly disappeared from his post. I rushed to the window, and through the trees, I saw 2 figures moving toward the cabin. My pulse hammered. I grabbed the poker and my phone, but before I could call, the door burst open. One man lunged at me. I swung the poker with every ounce of strength I had, catching him in the ribs. He stumbled, groaning, but the second man grabbed me from behind. I screamed, kicking and clawing. Suddenly, headlights blazed through the window, and a car horn blared. Sheriff Miller's voice shouted, "Drop her now!" The attackers panicked, bolting through the back door and disappearing into the woods. Deputies chased after them, but they vanished into the darkness. Miller rushed in. "Eleanor, are you hurt?" I shook my head, my breath ragged. "I'm fine, but this won't stop until I end it." The sheriff nodded grimly. "We'll catch them. I promise." The next morning we discovered a clue one of the attackers had dropped, a phone with a single message on the screen. "Finish it tonight. No loose ends." The sender. An unknown number traced back to a burner phone. I knew Daniel was orchestrating everything from prison. His reach was terrifying. But the more he pushed, the more determined I became. I met with Robert and Lisa to finalize a plan. "We need to cut off every string he's pulling," I said. "Freeze every account he could access, expose every ally helping him. Make it impossible for him to touch me." Lisa looked at me with wide eyes. "What if he comes after me too?" I placed my hand on hers. "Stay close to me. You'll be safe." Over the next few days we worked relentlessly. Robert filed emergency motions to secure my assets, while Miller quietly investigated Daniel's associates. We set traps, both legal and physical, waiting for Daniel to make his next move. And he did. 3 days later, an explosion rocked the cliffside property. I was at the cabin, but when I arrived, flames engulfed part of the house. Firefighters battled the blaze, but the damage was done. Someone had planted an incendiary device. The house, the home where John and I built our lives, was nearly destroyed. I stood there as the smoke rose into the sky, tears streaming down my face. Daniel had taken away more than walls and wood. He had burned my memories. The sheriff put a hand on my shoulder. "We'll catch whoever did this." I wiped my eyes. "No, Sheriff. I'll catch them." That night I went back to the ruins. The air reeked of smoke, and the ashes still glowed faintly. I stood at the edge of the cliff, the same cliff where he tried to kill me, and whispered to the wind, "You've taken everything, Daniel. But you've also given me the strength to end this once and for all." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number lit up the screen. "See how easy it is. You're next." I clenched the phone, my jaw tight. "No, Daniel. You're next." The time for waiting was over. I was done playing defense. The trap was ready, and soon Daniel would walk right into it. Because the one thing he underestimated was that a mother's resolve is stronger than any prison wall. In the next chapter, the final showdown begins. Daniel's last and most dangerous plan will leave you breathless. Don't miss it. Like, comment, and subscribe so you're here when the storm hits. The ashes of my burned house still smoldered in my heart when I set the final trap. Daniel had destroyed nearly everything that tied me to my past, but he had also given me one last gift: clarity. He wanted to play a game of fear and power. I would finish it on my terms. Sheriff Miller worked with me to set the stage. "We'll leak a rumor to the prison," he said. "We'll let it slip that you've transferred all your assets to a private vault, and you're meeting someone at the cliff to hand over the final deed." I smiled grimly. That's exactly what he'll want to hear. The plan was simple. Use his obsession against him. We arranged for the information to reach one of his known allies in jail. Within hours, the whispers spread like wildfire. Daniel took the bait. 3 days later, Miller called me. He escaped during a transfer. Again. But this time we're ready for him. The night was cold, the sky heavy with clouds when I drove to the cliff. I was not the same trembling old woman Daniel thought he could manipulate. I walked with my cane not because I needed it but because it reminded me of my strength. I reached the edge where it all began, the place he had once tried to end me. A small case sat by my side, a decoy filled with worthless papers. Hidden cameras dotted the trees, and deputies waited in the shadows. Hours passed. The ocean roared below. Then I heard it, the crunch of footsteps behind me. "Hello, Mom." His voice was calm, almost gentle. I turned slowly to see him step out of the darkness. His clothes were filthy, his eyes wild, but his smile was cold. "You really thought you could beat me? You've already lost, Daniel," I said quietly. "Look at yourself. You're not my son anymore. You're just a shadow." He stepped closer, his hands trembling. "Give me the papers, Mom. Or I swear I'll finish what I started." I stood firm. "You already tried once. Do you want to try again?" Rage twisted his face. "You think you're smarter than me?" "No," I said softly. "I know I am." With a roar, he lunged at me. I stumbled back, my heart pounding, but I didn't falter. The deputies rushed in from the trees, shouting commands. Daniel turned, snarling, swinging wildly at them. He fought like a man possessed, but he was no match for trained officers. They tackled him to the ground, cuffing him as he screamed, "I'll kill you! I'll kill all of you!" As they dragged him up, I stepped closer, looking into his furious eyes. "You'll never touch me again. This ends tonight." He spat at my feet. "You think prison will hold me?" I leaned in, my voice steady. "It's not prison that's holding you, Daniel. It's the truth. And it's stronger than you." The deputies pulled him back as he struggled, shouting curses until his voice faded into the night. The next morning, the judge signed an emergency order transferring Daniel to a maximum security facility with no chance of escape. For the first time, I felt the heavy chains of fear loosen. But even in victory, my heart ached. I had lost my son long ago. The boy I loved was gone, replaced by the man who had tried to kill me. Lisa came to the cabin, tears in her eyes. "It's over, Eleanor." He nodded. "Yes. But there's one thing left to do." Together we went to the cliff one last time. I stood at the edge, the wind whipping around me, and scattered John's remaining ashes into the sea. "It's finished, love," I whispered. "He can't hurt us anymore." As the sun rose over the horizon, the light warmed my face. For the first time in months I felt peace. But in the back of my mind, I knew the final chapter of this story still needed to be written. Because even with Daniel behind bars, there were questions that haunted me. Who had helped him? How deep did his network run? And most of all, could I ever truly forgive myself for raising the man he became? Those answers would come soon enough. Because the storm wasn't just over. It was about to deliver its final strike. In the next chapter, the conclusion will leave you speechless. The last twist in Daniel's plan will test everything I have left. Don't miss the grand finale. Like, comment, and subscribe so you hear the ending you won't forget. The morning after Daniel was sent to the maximum security prison, I woke up with a strange calmness. For the first time in months, I brewed my coffee without looking over my shoulder, without gripping the cane like a weapon. But as the steam rose from the cup, so did an unease deep in my chest. I had learned one painful truth. Peace never lasts when Daniel is involved. Sheriff Miller stopped by later that day. His expression grim. "Eleanor, we caught one of the men who helped Daniel escape the first time. He's talking, and you're not going to like what he said." I tightened my grip on the coffee cup. "Tell me." "He says Daniel has money hidden. Lots of it. Money he stole from you, money he used to buy loyalty. And he's been paying people, even outside the prison, to make sure you never live comfortably again." My jaw clenched. "Even behind bars, he's reaching for me." Miller nodded. "And there's more. He said Daniel had one last move, something he called the endgame. We don't know what it is, but whatever it is, he's been planning it for months." That night, as I sat alone in the cabin, the phone rang. I froze before answering. Daniel's voice slithered through the line, low and mocking. "Hi, Mom." My heart pounded. "How are you calling me?" "Oh, I have my ways," he said with a laugh that sent chills down my spine. "You think those bars can stop me? You think you've won? You're finished, Daniel," I said coldly. He chuckled. "No, Mom. You're finished. You just don't know it yet." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my hands trembling. This was his last threat, and I knew he meant it. The next few days were eerily quiet, almost too quiet. Deputies watched my property, Lisa stayed by my side, and Robert made sure every legal safeguard was in place. Yet the silence felt like a coiled snake waiting to strike. And then it struck. On the third night, the power went out across the entire property. The deputies' radios cut out. Phones died. I grabbed a lantern and stood in the center of the cabin, every nerve screaming. The sound of footsteps echoed outside. Lisa clung to my arm. "Eleanor, he's here." "No," I whispered. "He can't be. He's locked up." But when the door burst open, it wasn't Daniel. It was one of his allies, masked and armed. "Where's the case?" he shouted, waving a crowbar. I stepped forward, calm despite the fear clawing at me. "You're too late." He lunged toward me, but before he could strike, a shot rang out. Sheriff Miller stood in the doorway, gun smoking. The man fell to the floor, groaning in pain as deputies stormed in and dragged him away. Miller looked at me. "You okay?" I nodded slowly. "Yes. But this isn't over until Daniel is truly gone." The next morning, news broke that Daniel had been caught trying to bribe a guard for a weapon. He had failed, and now he was being moved to solitary confinement, cut off from all contact. For the first time, he had no more moves left. Days turned into weeks, and the darkness that had consumed my life slowly lifted. Lisa moved to a new city to start over. Robert ensured all my assets were protected, and Miller kept a close watch. I rebuilt my house piece by piece, not because I needed the walls, but because I needed to reclaim what was mine. 1 month later, I received a letter. My hand shook as I opened it. It was from Daniel. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. I lost. You won. Maybe I was wrong about everything. Maybe you were right to fight me. But even now, I can't stop hating you. I don't know why. Maybe because you're stronger than me. Maybe because you're everything I could never be. This is the last letter you'll ever get from me. Goodbye. I folded the paper and set it in a drawer. Tears rolled down my cheeks, not for the man who wrote it, but for the boy I had lost long ago. Life slowly returned to normal, but I would never be the same. I had faced the darkest side of love, the kind that turns to betrayal, and I had survived. Standing at the edge of the cliff one last time, I whispered to the sea. "It's over, John. It's finally over." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky gold. For the first time in a long while, I let the wind carry away my fears. Daniel's shadow would always linger, but it no longer controlled me. I had taken my life back. And to everyone listening to my story, I say this. Never underestimate the strength of a woman who has been betrayed. Because betrayal doesn't break us. It shapes us into something unshakable. Thank you for following my journey. If this story moved you, like, comment, and subscribe so more people can hear it. Remember, no matter how dark things get, you have the power to rise again.